So I got to meet you 2 years ago when I did a master class at Barclays in London. And the master class was a micro tyco master class. Can you tell us your relationship with micro tyco and why is that an important relationship for Barclays?
So I first came across microtyco about 3 years ago, actually, when we were having some diversity presentations in Glasgow as part of our diversity week. So I met Colin and Mick, who are both part of the Wild Hearts organisation, and part of their what they do in the microtyco challenge is it is an entrepreneurial challenge where the participants, and those participants can be from university, schools, or the workplace. Clearly, in our case, it was the workplace. They all get £1 seed capital, and they're given 1 month and some entrepreneurial training to turn that seed capital into whatever they can in terms of business ideas, entrepreneurial ideas. And we really launched this in the Barclays HR function across the global function because it was something very different. And at the time, our new head of operations and technology was all around innovation. So it really tied in very well in terms of our business agenda, where we're trying to innovate with our business to actually have the people in the HR function, training them to be innovative and think entrepreneurially was just something really different and something very engaging as well. It was a little bit of fun and a fun element to the micro tyco challenge as well. What we loved about it is the 3 key components, the 3 pillars, which the micro tyco challenge training is built on, is all around inspiration, knowledge, and networks. And I think that is something that you can take into any aspect of your working life, or in fact, life outside of work. And one of the things, well, 2 things that I think struck a chord for us in the organisation were the why. So that is so important, and people really embrace this within the organisation. And the amount of participation and the effort and the passion people put into it, it wasn't just because of competitive HR, but I'm sure that was part of it. It was the why. And they knew that what they were doing was something for good, for the greater good. And they knew that we'd get feedback on that. They could see what the money they'd raised, where it was being invested in the good that it was doing. And I think the other thing that was great was, which we all learned, myself included, was being an entrepreneur. It's actually a way of thinking, and it's about building on other people's ideas. It's not necessarily having new ideas. It's using ideas as a foundation and having the courage to take them to the next step. And I think for people in HR, you probably think I can't be an entrepreneur. But for us, when we saw the ideas and the passion and enthusiasm that came out of it, and when we did the first challenge, we did a global challenge across 27 countries, and we had a number of teams around the globe. Somebody said to me, how much do you think you'll raise across HR? And it wasn't really about the money, but it was about the participation and the learning. But I said if we raised £50,000, I would actually be over the moon. And they didn't tell me till the 11th hour. We had a great big award ceremony, which was brought a tear to many people's eyes. But actually, we raised £111,000 globally on the first challenge, which was just beyond anything we expected.
Oh, that's incredible. And then that money that's raised, and that goes to micro loans to entrepreneurs in developing economies?
That's absolutely right. What happens is the money that we've raised gets used to finance entrepreneurs, predominantly females, in the developing countries. And they then get, the loans typically get recycled maybe 3 times a year. It depends on which country, it's different by country. But what we love about it is we can see the impact. So far the money we've raised between the HR pilot, well, we've done twice in HR, we've done it in Scotland, and we've also used Microtyco for our graduate program this year, but the money that we've raised so far we know has impacted 15,000 lives already. But because they get recycled and reused over the next 5 years, we're going to have impacted as an organisation 275,000 lives, which is just incredible.
That's amazing. You know, Jacinta, one of the things that if I were to say that probably most CEOs of companies care about is profitable growth, innovation, an engaged workforce, and connection to society. And this program, to me, sort of does it all. And I sort of reverse it. I basically say that through what you're doing with Microtyco, you're actually engaging your employees' passion in a very, very different way. You are, as you put it, raising the why up to a very visible and visceral position for your employees. And then they give you their discretionary effort because they want to innovate, which of course then does grow profitable growth for a company. So what was very impressive to me even 2 years ago was how engaged. There's lots of employee engagement programs, and I think that they're great. I don't think they're as impactful in many respects as letting your team work as a team and innovate and use an entrepreneurial mindset to see their results in totally impacting thousands and thousands of people beyond what they probably could do in most employee engagement programs. So it seems to me that the benefit is an engaged workforce, but more importantly, they're actually seeing the impact in a very global scale.
I couldn't agree with you more, Cheryl. I think it wasn't the reason why we did it, but it was certainly a byproduct. And if we could have bottled and sold the feeling and the emotion and the passion and the pride that people had on the day when we did our award ceremony, we had video conferences from all around the world, and we had all of the HR leadership team involved giving out prizes, etc. It was absolutely amazing, and I think there's a couple of things came from it. Was 97% of the people who participated said that they felt that they'd learned new skills as a result of it, which was amazing. They all definitely built their networks, which is so important, particularly working in a big organisation like Barclays. And one of the things we were really, really keen to do was not just award people for the teams that had raised the most money. It's really important that we actually recognise people who'd come up with innovative ideas. So it might have been the best idea, but it failed. But had they had more time, or they'd had time to be a true entrepreneur and build on that foundation, it would have been a great success had they had more than the 4 weeks. So we were very careful when it came to the award ceremony that it wasn't about the money that was raised, it was about the participation, the thinking and the learning as well.
So this has been wildly successful. Can you give me a couple of stories that you're most proud of when people have been involved in the Microtyco challenge and gone into the business? You know, maybe even colleagues of yours saying that, possibly teams that didn't work together might be working together. Are there some anecdotes that you can talk about that say, wow, as a result of this program, we are working differently, or new products have been developed? Because this is an incredibly powerful social innovation program.
So I would say that one little example that comes to me is I know that one particular individual in my, who's in my broader team, who probably lacked confidence in their own ability. I think everybody else had confidence in their ability, but she didn't have the same confidence in her own ability. Through the program, she was put in a team with somebody and asked them to be her mentor. And that individual has since been mentored by somebody she met through the Microtyco challenge and been in that team, somebody she hadn't worked with before, but also has been promoted since and moved location and moved to a totally different location, moved from where they were working to a different location with Barclays and got promoted, which is a fabulous story. I think the other, one of the, you mentioned it before, was the word cloud. I think when we got the feedback in and we had the word cloud up on the wall with all of the feedback, you know, as an HR director in a team, you would actually have kind of paid money to get that feedback and that passion and that positivity. So that was pretty amazing when that went up, and particularly when you talked about it when you did the masterclass for us. But I think for me that the piece de resistance was if somebody had said to me, you know, 3 years ago that I would be sitting in just a diversity week in Scotland. It's just a low-key thing that we do in Scotland across the campus, 2,000 staff. And when I first met Mick and his team, to hosting the Wild Hearts Gel Summit and having the quality of speakers that we had this year, including Elizabeth Nayamara from the founder of the He for She campaign. What that meant was we were actually able to broadcast that particular conference out to all of our staff, to our teams, who would never have had the opportunity to listen real time to somebody, you know, as inspirational as Elizabeth and a number of the speakers. So for me, I thought the conference, the Gel Summit this year, which we would never have done had we not worked with Mick and Wild Hearts and the Micro Tyco Challenge, was phenomenal.
What I would love to talk a little bit about now is that a lot of conversation at the Wild Hearts Gel Summit is around supply chain management and corporate social responsibility and HR. And as I indicated, this course is about moving from just compliance and philanthropy to more of social innovation, a strategic intent. Can you talk a little bit about Barclays' strategic intent moving, if you will, from just corporate social responsibility, which is really good and powerful, but to a more integrated, aligned, strategic approach around your investments in corporate social responsibility and social innovation?
Yeah, so I think from Barclays' perspective, we really have kind of moved the dial in terms of recognising and wanted to be not just look at CSR as philanthropy, as you say, and thinking about using Barclays and our business as a force for good, making more ethical decisions, and thinking about the place where we operate, making it a better place. One of our values internally, we have 5 values that we work with from a Barclays perspective, and one of them, I was thinking about this, is stewardship. And it's about stewardship is in our values is really about leaving Barclays in a better place than when you found it. But I think that's also, in the broader sense, it's not just Barclays in a better place than how you found it and having a legacy. It's actually the society and the environment within which we work. Jess Staley, our CEO, talks about, in terms of our shared growth, our citizenship agenda, and where we want to go, as about Barclays not being able to be successful or prosper unless the societies and the communities in which we live and work also prosper. So I think it's the tone from the top. It's very much so. You know, I alluded to before, we talked about, you know, the He for She campaign and having 10 political leaders and 10 university leaders and 10 business leaders. Jess is one of those 10. And I think what I love about our shared growth plan is that it's about the 3 things we want to focus on is giving people access to finance, giving people access to employment, and financially and digitally empowering people. And I think Wild Hearts and what they do in the Micro Tyco is very, very complementary to this, because we are giving people access to finance, and we are actually creating employment, because each loan that we give to somebody in the developing world, they create employment, and then that loan gets used 2 or 3 times. So it is creating that. So it fits in very, very nicely. And I'm sure that you're aware, Cheryl, we have a lot of, we have a social innovation facility in Barclays, right, where we actually do a lot of work with startups and fintech companies, and we provide people with the facilities and the tools that they might normally get with a view to co-collaborating with them. And we've also got an internal where we have an entrepreneurship program where it's a little bit like a dragon's den, and people pitch, etc., and then get support. And the types of products and things that come out of that are like a Women in Leadership Index and banking products for the armed forces. So we have a number of different things that go on in the organisation. And I think even the entrepreneurship, which I talked about, that's a little bit like, the wild hots in terms of having an idea and pitching for it and going to do something about it. So there's a lot of synergies between the Micro Tyco Challenge and the social innovation and being a force to good, which is amazing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely amazed at how integrated the whole mindset of Micro Tyco, Wild Hearts, entrepreneurial thinking and acting, we call it that at Babson, is at Barclays, because you've actually, a lot of times companies are resistant to sort of entrepreneurial thinking and acting inside, because most companies tend to be much more managerial in terms of how they manage people, but Barclays is very entrepreneurial, and you've seen the results of it. And I think that when we talk about partnerships, being able to have started that partnership with Micro Tyco gave you that experiment, that place to start and see the impact it would have on your organization and your employees, because it was just an experiment to start and see what could happen. And it was a total win, a win for your company, a win for the entrepreneurs that you were able to invest in, and a win for your employees. So the organization, your employees, and the entrepreneurs all benefited from £1 and 1 month. It really does blow me away how impactful that is, and you see the results immediately. You don't have to worry about measuring, because the results are immediate. You see the amount of money that you've made, you see the relationships, you see the networks that are being built, you see the new knowledge being built, and you see the impact with the businesses on the ground wherever they may be. The way that you measure this for Barclays, among other programs that you do, how does this measure up to the impact of other programs that you do around your citizenship?
So we particularly did not have this as a citizenship program, because we've got a very robust strategy in terms of citizenship. And I think, Cheryl, I think you and I have had conversations in terms of from inception and meeting Mick, how we actually went about kind of gaining advocates across the organisation to make sure. So it took a while to get the right advocacy in place for us to be able to then get the right sponsorship in a big organisation like Barclays to be able to run something like a Micro Tyco Challenge. So I think because we wanted to start it as a pilot within the HR function, the group HR director were almost in charge of our own destiny in terms of HR. And I think that the Micro Tyco Challenge, it could be, labelled as a citizenship program, it could be labelled as a development program, it could be labelled as an engagement program. So I think because we want to be masters of our own destiny, we positioned it more as a development and engagement. Mm-hmm. And I think although there's no doubt about it that the individuals who took part and the rest of the organisation saw it as touching on all three. And we did an employee opinion survey pretty much of 2 or 3 weeks, because we have an annual survey 2 or 3 weeks after we did the Micro Tyco Challenge, and the engagement scores had gone up. Now, it's very difficult to pinpoint and say it was because of the Micro Tyco Challenge, but I think the leadership team in HR and myself and others included all thought that absolutely did have a positive impact. And what's really interesting is that the organisation that works with us on our employee engagement, there is a statistical link between and a strong correlation between people who score highly on corporate social responsibility and sustainable engagement. And as you mentioned earlier, if companies are good at the corporate social responsibility, social innovation, whatever you want to call it, that does impact social sustainable engagement, and that increases discretionary effort, which in turn increases productivity and impacts the bottom line. So it's also got a business benefit as well.
Would you like to share anything else that this kind of program benefits the social innovation aspect of Barclays? What are your next challenges, and how might this partnership with Micro-Tyco help you address other business challenges?
So I think we're at the point where we are taking stock in terms of how we use Micro-Tyco next in the organisation. I have been asked to look at diversity for the Chief Operating Office across the whole of Barclays globally. So we're looking at our diversity strategies at the moment, and this is still food for thought, so who knows, watch this space. But I think that one of the aspects we've been considering is whether we can link Micro-Tyco and people winning Micro-Tyco as part of a attraction strategy to bring females into the organisation, particularly in the technology space. Because one thing we have noticed, Cheryl, which is interesting, is that, and Mick said that he finds this, Mick Jackson, the CEO of Wild Hearts, no matter which organisation he goes in, for some reason, women and a lot of the winning teams, and certainly Barclays, I have, but Mick said it's not exclusive to Barclays, it seems to be that women do particularly well in at the Micro-Tyco challenge. So that's interesting itself. So I think we're trying to think how we can actually leverage that from a business perspective. One thing we did do, which was interesting, and I think it was innovative in itself, is we went out to a number of universities and we did a Micro-Tyco challenge, and the winning team got an internship, an opportunity to come and work with us in Barclays in terms of an internship. So we are looking at innovative ways in itself, how we can use Micro-Tyco to tackle some of the business problems that we have.
I love that. I love that notion, because we talk a lot at Babson, and I know that the Lewis Institute partners quite a bit with corporations, and the new partnership and link between higher ed and corporations beyond just a research agenda is really important. It's particularly our students want real time, real life experience. I know right now we're trying to identify companies to work with our MBAs for a semester on addressing the UN global goals, so they can use their MBA and entrepreneurial background to be able to help a company move forward on a particular UN global goal that they're addressing. And it's real time, it's important, it will be valued. So I love that you're partnering with universities and offering an internship. I think that's really creative. I love that idea. That's fantastic.
So one couple little snippets that I might finish with, which I think really interesting, is the whole concept is around networking, knowledge, etc. When we did the challenge in HR, we did quite a lot of fundraising. Money got raised in India. What we didn't realise, it was near on impossible to get that money out of India legally. So we tried every but which way, and in the end, Wild Hearts and the CEO Mick ended up going over to India and working with microfinance partners in India. So they had never ventured into India before. So Wild Hearts are now, due to their relationship with Barclays and the fact that we'd raised this money and couldn't get it out of India, have set up in India, and therefore we are doing good in India. So it was a great correlation in terms of our global footprint, us being able to be working within the communities. So I just thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, the more I talk to you, the more I see that Micro-Tyco and Wild Hearts really does spread out and have a pretty huge handprint on the global context of Barclays. Is there anything else you'd like to end with before we conclude? We are just enormously grateful that you've taken the time to be here, because we actually have used your social innovation laboratory in an earlier segment. So I'm delighted that we have you in the flesh, so to speak. So how would you like to conclude for our students around how something like this partnership can really increase social innovation?
So I think for me personally, this has been a massive development, challenge for me, because, I kind of saw something that I was passionate about, but I didn't know how to get it into a big organization like Barclays, which, you know, you mentioned that we are very innovative, and we are, but we're also can be bureaucratic. It's a, you know, it's a big organization. So for me, it was huge development to think about how I could, you know, get the advocacy and kind of do all of the laying of the foundations to make this happen. So I would say that for anyone who is thinking about, you know, an idea, don't give up on the idea and keep at it. And I said, you know, I saw Mick actually, you know, over the weekend. Through, you know, we kind of catch up now, made new networks, and I said, who would have thought in 3 years? Because 3 years ago, I said to Mick, I'd love us to be hosting the GEL Summit, and it's just happened. So for me, it's about not giving up and having your ideas and keep building on, and not giving up and keep trying, you know, at it. Because, you know, and if anyone's got any great ideas in terms of how they can use Micro Tyco, you know, if people who are listening to this, then we'd love to hear them.
That's great. Well, you're clearly an entrepreneur inside. I'll ask one question, which I'd love to know. As you have an idea and a passion, and as you said, don't give up on it, can you reflect back on your early days to who was your first champion where you felt somebody has my back, I can take this risk, I can do it? Who was a champion that supported you to be able to take that next step?
So I think that I knew I had to speak to my boss and get him to understand. So what I probably did is I got a few of my peer group as advocates first, and in particular my boss's chief of staff, because I knew that that person was quite a big influencer with my boss, and then got Mick invited along to one of our leadership team meetings. And for those who don't know Mick, he's extremely passionate, and he's very difficult to resist. He's so passionate about his topic. So that took about 5 months, and I think once Mick had come along and spoke to kind of all my peer group and my boss at one of our leadership team meetings, that the seeds were well and truly sown then.
Great. Well, again, I can't thank you enough. I'm inspired by you. I know our students will be inspired by you. And I hope I see you soon when I get over to London. So we're very, very grateful for you being part of our class.
Thank you, Cheryl.